Our focus of our reviews with our project team is not on what is the duration. It's what is the production rate that you're going to get in that area at that time with the people that we have planned for that project. It completely switches from just putting in a date into P6. It switches the entire conversation to be, how are we accomplishing that work? Program manager said, Josh, if you can get this to work, not just on this project of being able to create accurate forecasts of revenue, cost, and cash flow, you can change my business model completely. I can know what I'm going to be earning, what I'm going to be spending, the people I'm going to need. I can manage projects completely different.
I like this focus on predictability, not a focus on overachievement. By the way, that's a philosophy that people listening to this might go, that's really weird. Well, actually, when for the majority of construction, cash management is the actual name of the game, and predictability is far more profitable than overachievement, because if you forecast that you'd be low on cash and suddenly you're high on cash, yeah, great, but the Treasury Department has gone out and got an emergency loan to cover the cash position and you're paying 10% interest on it.
Hi, folks. A quick one before we dive into this week's episode. Our book, The Critical Path Career, How to Advance in Construction Planning and Scheduling, is out now, and you can order it on Amazon. We'll include a link below. This is a great way to show support for the Beyond Deadlines podcast, and Greg and I have worked extremely hard taking everything we know in our 30 years of experience, plus everything we've picked up from shooting this podcast, and we've tried to pack it into an information-dense book that you can use right away. In the book, we have specific strategies on how to get a raise, how to get a promotion, and find a new job. We include 26 of the best interview questions that we have come across, in addition to 34 specific impact ideas that you can go use on your projects today. We want to thank everyone who's shown us support so far and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Mike Apipo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager.
My name is Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nose and Links.
Hi, I'm Joshua Wollan. I'm the Director of Project Control Scheduling for Zachry Construction Corp.
Today on Beyond Deadlines, we are pushing the bounds. That means we are going over the deadlines, and we are going to talk about advanced planning and scheduling techniques. We're going to leave the basics behind and hopefully blast forward into some real juicy tactics and strategies that you can use. Josh, do you want to take it away for us?
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing that I say we struggle with as schedulers is to have our voice heard, to really make a difference in things. And so to really go beyond just updating a schedule and submitting it to the owner and managing our schedules, you have to start being able to make a difference and be able to impact change at your companies. And that's where over the past, I started with Zachry about 8 years ago. I've had the opportunity to basically build and develop our entire program. And I've gotten to the point where our schedules are being utilized and looked to by our accounting department, by our equipment department. We handle and are supporting pretty much all of our claims and processes that we do. And every single project and every single person that works on our projects, their bonuses, what they get graded on and what they get really the advancement in their career is based upon how they perform according to the schedule and their cost report. And as part of the scheduling department here at Zachry, we take the schedule from the project team and we combine it with our cost reports. And every year we go and we create forecasts for those projects that are based upon the actual schedule that guys are using. Their bonuses become based on it. They now take an active role and interest in how the schedule is being managed, created, and what it says every quarter, every month as it's being updated. And so now we have a voice, not just with departments. We have a voice with the individual people that are basically responsible for managing the project. And so having that voice allows us to do all kinds of things with the schedule. Zachry has given me the opportunity to use just about all of the major software that is out there to manage projects. So I have access and use Notes and Links and their platform. I have Smart PM. All of our schedules are loaded up and managed in Smart PM. I have Planera is now coming on board, and we're loading all of our schedules in there. We also recently started with Alice to look at schedule acceleration and these types of things. We have always had kind of a group of the Deltec, Acumen, Fuse, 360, and Risk. And so our project team are utilizing all of those types of software to really get at the heart of how can we improve and manage our schedules better, and get to the heart of looking at the construction work and dealing with the guys out there in the field. And because we both have all the tools that we need and could possibly come up with, and we also have the ability to interact and to really speak to the guys out there in the field, we're able to bring those things together and really impact change on our projects. I would say that there is not a month, there's not a baseline schedule that I review that we don't get, 5 to 6 different what if requests of, hey, what if we do this, or what if we do that, or if we adjust this. And it's always this give and take and this pull and push related to, we're getting ahead here. How do we continue to do that better? How do we, take that opportunity that we have and really make it beneficial for the company and for the project teams? Or we're struggling here. How do we deal with that issue so that we can turn that around? Because we want to be profitable. We want to complete our projects, early, because that makes us be more profitable, makes owners happy, it makes the project more fun to construct. And so that to me is pushing the bounds of taking all of these kind of schedule tools, schedule things that are out there, but really start to push it into the field and push it into impacting people and impacting the projects.
So there's three things there that I'm actually a little gobsmacked at. I'll be transparent. I'm a little gobsmacked at a couple of those things. It's one the first one people will probably laugh at, because if you're not a senior manager or a manager, or you haven't tried to build a business, it seemed like 101. But then when you actually try and build a business or you're a manager, it's like, I have no idea how you managed to pull that off, which is aligning incentives. So getting people's bonuses based on cost and schedule accuracy. Again, it should seem so unbelievably obvious that a company that makes its money from delivering things on time and on budget should compensate its people based on hitting on time and on budget. That's not how the world works, and we all know that. How the hell did you pull that one off?
It all started probably back when I worked for Walsh. A program manager came and saw what I was doing. And he said, Josh, if you can get this to work, not just on this project of being able to create accurate forecasts of revenue, cost, and cash flow, you can create that. You can change my business model completely, because I can know what I'm going to be earning, what I'm going to be spending, the people I'm going to need. Suddenly I can manage projects completely different. And I would say the fundamental one thing that I did, we talk about early dates and we talk about late dates. What project ever accomplishes either? None. P6 doesn't have an average button. It doesn't have an average line. And that's the fundamental thing that I changed on our forecast. I stopped broadcasting early dates. I stopped broadcasting late dates in our forecast for cash, revenue, work hours, material quantities. None of those really follow early or late dates. They follow the average. So if you can convert your systems to where you're looking at the average, suddenly people see your schedules and see the forecast that you're presenting as that you're accomplishing them, rather than always being behind. So often we focus on that early date, and because that's what owners say. Hey, I want you to tell me the early dates because I want to know how early you're going to get there. That's your plan. Well, no, my plan is really my average. And so when you focus on that average, I run 40 different projects where we've taken and we've combined the cost report and the schedule. And I can go back and across all 40 projects over the past year. And I'm playing, as Ranjit, my boss, VP of Project Control, says, you're playing scratch golf with this stuff, Josh. I'm one stroke behind or one stroke ahead on every single project because I've changed the focus. And now, because people are seeing that the schedules are doable, they're accurate, they provide forecasts that we can count on, now accounting's coming me, and I have to update our forecasts every quarter. And they are chomping at the bit every quarter to get. I want to see Josh's forecast. I want to see how we're going to be towards the end of the year. Are we going to make this? Are we going to do that?
I guess if your forecasts are accurate and people believe in them, then I guess it's not too far until some senior managers go, well, we're going to target our people based on these. Is that kind of how it flowed?
Yes. When I first came on, I focused almost entirely on the quality of our schedules, the accuracy of our schedules, making sure that schedules were getting updated on a timely basis. So my first 3 years at Zachry were create accurate schedules, good quality, consistency, do that. Then we brought in the revenue and cost and work hours and all this types of stuff and got those pushed into our schedules. Now people started
What do you
seeing.
think? Sorry, not to interrupt, Josh. Where do you think the tipping point was in those 3 years? Was there a moment, or was it just kind of serendipitous where you're like, now we can add in cost and really start pushing it? Like, when did you get that comfort level that you were ready to kind of expand, or did it just happen gradually?
There was a tipping moment when I learned how to jerry rig, and that's.
Do say more. Take that restrictor plate off your carburetor and let's rock and roll.
Okay. Most people, when they go into schedules and do revenue, cost, and work hour loading, they go activity by activity and they try to figure out their revenue, cost, and their work hours, and they put it on their activity.
Yeah, don't do that, but continue. Yes, I feel, come on.
It's never right. It's impossible to manage.
Yes.
It's always changing. One thing I always say is, that forecast was good for a day. It changed the next day. So it was just impossible to manage. So what we do is we go in and we've created a whole set of resources that are specifically for our cost, revenue, work hours. And we don't have them applied to our schedules as we manage and update them. We go in and apply them whenever we're going to do a revenue, cost, work hours reforecast. We apply them new. And then I basically count up how many days that I've applied to the schedule for those different resources. And they're all by different divisions within our cost report. So we have, I'd say, about 20 different groupings in our cost report. And so I take every day that we've got planned in the schedule to work remaining, and I take the total cost that we have, that grouping, I divide it, and I come up with basically a cost for that activity to work a day. That is an average. It is not specific to that project, but it is based upon the duration of the project. And so by doing that, I don't have to worry about trying to update stuff. I can take any cost report and I can push my work hours, I can push my costs, I can push my revenue back into it. And it takes my guys upwards of maybe a day and a half to do this process. And therefore, it's not a killer lift. It does take time, but it gives a forecast that is not exactly activity by activity. But when I look at my groupings, they have all the cost in there. Whatever my cost report has reforecasted for the remainder of the project, I now have in there. Now I pull that out of into Excel. I get an early date for cost. I get a late date for cost. And then I divide it by, add them up, divide it by 2 to get that average line. And that's what we send out to our executives. They're not looking at details of, activities or anything like that. They're looking at a revenue curve. How are we accomplishing things according to that revenue curve? How are we accomplishing according to that cost? And now what I have all of the area managers for our region, their bonuses for the region are based upon how much cost they put in place. It's actually the driving factor. We want you putting work in place because that's how we're successful. We're not here to simply have people on a project. We're here to put work in place. If they have a project that starts, not meeting its cost forecast, they start looking at the schedule to say, where can we pull this forward? How can we take this piece of work? We know we have a delay here. We know that the owner's slowing us down here, or I've got a subcontractor issue here. But now how do I go find something else in the schedule that I could bring forward to replace that cost? And they're managing it project by project. They're managing it across their region. And our executive vice president is managing it across the country. And so because I've found that easy way to push back what is accurate information regarding cost, revenue, work hours, I now can provide them new forecasts, and we do that on a quarterly basis.
You're triggering a million thoughts in my head here, and I'm going to ask a question in a second. But I'm just going to repeat something back to make sure I understand it, because you're saying things in simple planning language that also correlates with a lot of research that I'm seeing, but it's in different languages. And when two subjects meet and they agree, it probably says that you're onto something proper. Part of this, I think, is a philosophy that isn't really written down somewhere that very, very senior people like yourself can pick up and you just know, which is at the granular detail, the job of a schedule is not to plan the world perfectly. The job of a schedule is to allocate finite resources. At a high level, the job of a schedule is to make promises that the business can keep. You get paid given business, so the opportunity for revenue, by making promises, and you get given revenue by keeping those promises. So what that means in a philosophical way is you hit a level where the detail below doesn't matter and is an evolution. And the bit of research, Micah and I talked about this in a previous episode, while it was the concept of decomplexification, like the actual mathematics of decomplexifying. And one of the techniques of how you decomplexify a project, which, by the way, eliminates a large amount of long tail uncertainty. So you increase predictability and accelerate your projects mathematically at the same time by doing it, is aggregation. But one thing I haven't been able to put my finger on is what level. And it seems like you've cracked that. Do you do the same kinds of projects or the same complexity of projects? Or have you just found a mass cheat code?
I'm leaning more towards finding the cheat code. Our projects are heavily road and bridge projects, so it's very much similar. But I have very little concern that I could walk into any company and whatever it is their business. Any company has probably 20 to 30 different groupings of work. That is how they would break down their work. Our minds just simply, it gets much beyond that, and it's not something we can deal with. So you will find that pretty much any general contractor, they break down their work into, about 20 to 30 different groupings. And if you can sort your schedule by that 20 to 30 different groupings, and you can sort your cost systems by that same 20 to 30 groupings, then the details don't matter. They're all in there. All the costs are really in your system, as long as you do have a fully baked schedule and you're just not only putting the work that's important in there. If you're putting your entire scope of work into your schedule, the details are in there, and you just have to be a way to get the two to connect so that you can distribute that stuff quickly, easily, and effectively. Normally, when I would take and do a true cost and revenue loading of a schedule, I'd spend 2 weeks doing it, trying to get all those costs right and things like that in nature. And you spend 2 weeks trying to really do that in detail. And it's not productive because, like I said, a week later, the next cost report that you get, all those things have really changed. So that's a fruitless effort. But being able to take, 4 to 6 hours and be able to translate those two, bring them together, and provide a new forecast going forward is really, once I showed that to our people, they're like, well, we need this on every job. Why don't we have this on every job? 2 weeks ago,
Let me just counter this a little bit, because there are one or 2 points where I'm not fully understanding what you're saying. I'm just thinking here about, well, there is a group of people that believe fundamentally in bottom-up planning, and an average to develop the cost curves only works if you have the right number of units. So it's a unit of something times an average of something gives you a value of something. So, rather than saying it's $10 for this task, $200 for this task, you're just going, generally it's $100. How many kind of distributed tasks or task days. I think you said it's to do with the days associated with something. That then just kind of changes the focus from, for example, a cost structure to getting the days absolutely right of how long it will take to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get that right?
It goes back to, I will get people that say, well, I don't like the quantity load my schedules. I don't want that information in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, well, your schedule's pretty much useless in my book. We fundamentally believe that you have to put the quantities to that scope of work that activity is going to take. You have to put that quantity in there. And then we generally know the production rate. And that's where I give our people the ability to use their expertise and their knowledge. Because if we're doing earthwork and we're doing it on an entire mile of highway, I can get one productive. On that same project, I may come in and do earthwork on, an intersection, and I'm using different equipment. I'm using different, crews and manpower, and it's different cases. So I need to adjust my productivity that I will get in that area, but it's still all based upon the quantity of work that activity has. And so when I talked about the first 3 years that I was here at Zachry, the fundamental thing that we got into our schedules is nobody is not going to issue a schedule without going through all of their major activities and putting their quantities on there. And then our focus of our reviews with our project team is not on what is the duration. It's what is the production rate that you're going to get in that area at that time with the people that we have planned for that project. It completely switches from just putting in a date into P6. It switches the entire conversation to be, how are we accomplishing that work? What are we doing to do the work? What kind of equipment do we have? What is our production rate that we're actually going to be achieved? And so we're never just saying, oh, this will be 10 days, this will be 12 days. We're determining what our durations are based upon the actual quantity that we have to install. And that was the first 3 years, was getting our schedules reflective of the actual production rates that we'll use when we go to do the work. Once I had that, and that's already in there based upon the duration of the activities, when I'm talking about the units that we're putting cost to, we're basically saying I have 25 activities in a grouping that come up to 110 days worth of work. So that particular type of activity is going to work for 110 days. Some activities, yes, there might be more expensive for us to do, things of that nature, but we're taking that cost for that group and dividing it by that 110 days, and putting that as a unit cost into P6. It's now distributing that cost across the activities that are in the schedule to give me my forecast.
There clearly should be edge cases where, like, for example, production of documents. You might not have production of, like, things, what I'd call, like, the paper project. It's not just the project outside, or things that you don't control, like permitting and these.
Those will be listed usually, though, as overheads. And one thing I want to, chat about as well, too, because I get this a lot. There's probably a lot of people out there being like, well, he works on roads and bridges and I can't cost and quantity load my schedule and blah, 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 blah. And to me, usually the crux of it is that perfect example, Greg, where you're like, well, what about these edge cases? And to me, that's where they bring up an excuse to not do it at all. And I'm like, that system, you'll be in a much better place to then, hey, we're working on this unique thing, or this edge thing. You already have your cost and quantity loading. So then 80 to 90% of it's already done. And you just do a little massage on that 10%. But I always get that pushback of, like, they take the edge cases to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And
You're right, actually. I did a bad management thing there. So the philosophy is never associate the company on edge cases, associate it on the most likely, and you deal with edge cases. So yes, I was actually thinking how I'd create it in my head, like these, because you're right, not many people do resource loading, but what it means is the most sacred piece of information that your planners have developed is production rates. Because then you could just go to a job and go, I've done quite a lot of roads, and you could just be like, well, this 1 kilometer, we're moving this much earth, it's of this type of the year, depending on rain or whatnot. Therefore, that is the production that we can produce. And it's just a simple multiplication. And then you decomplexify the whole thing by just averaging the whole thing over a large enough chunk. 110 days is going on 4 months, so you can basically average that. And then I guess at the ground, if you've got everyone comped on hitting that target because their bonuses are geared against that target, lo and behold, it'll happen. It doesn't really matter how. Suddenly it starts happening. Yeah, it's weird.
There's the real cheat code.
The cheat code is come up with something reasonable and then say to people, you get paid by doing it.
That is the cheat code. And the thing that I think, though, is important is as I get towards the end of the year, I have one constant theme that I'm pushing out to everybody on the projects. Your bonuses are based off of your schedule at the end of the month, at the end of the year. Your bonuses are based upon your job costs at the end of the year. Your forecast is going to get created by you. You have it in your hand to adjust what you're going to get graded on for the next year. It's not some area manager saying, I want this guy to make $2 million. It's not some project manager who's got an idea of what he can and get. It's your schedule. It's your job cost. You make that accurate at the end of the year. We're going to grade you on how accurately you made that schedule and you made that forecast. That's what we're going to grade you on. You accomplish that, we're going to plan for that. Accounting, finance, everything up above, equipment, we're going to plan for what you said you're going to do. If you accomplish that, good, bad, otherwise, we have instances where we're going to lose cash on our projects because of the position we're going to in. We like that because we're cash forward on things. But we know it's going to happen. You've planned for that. You've shown us that that's what's going to happen. When that happens and it stays within the plan that you put forward, you're rewarded for that. Your bonus is based upon you accomplishing whatever plan that you put out there at the end of the year.
I like this focus on predictability, not a focus on overachievement. And that might, by the way, that's a philosophy that people listening to this might go, that's really weird. Well, actually, for the majority of construction, cash management is the actual name of the game, and predictability is far more profitable than overachievement. Because if you forecast that you'd be low on cash and suddenly you're high on cash, yeah, great, but the Treasury Department has gone out and got an emergency loan to cover the cash position and you're paying 10% interest on it. So actually, naughty. I tell you what, there's a couple of philosophies here. Just before we round out this episode, I'm sure there's going to be a couple of people listening to this going, I like the cut of your jib, is the saying in English. I like what you're saying. Are there opportunities for other people to get involved with Zachry?
Oh, that's a long-term question. As part of our strategic plan, we had a company come in for Zachry and help us do our strategic plan for the next 5 and 10 years. And one of the things that they made the comment of was, Zachry, you've got some awesome cost systems, scheduling systems, your SAP cloud, everything that you're using to manage your stuff is really great. You really ought to be taking that and trying to push that forward to provide it as a service in some way, some manner. And so they recommended that we get into the construction management, not at risk kind of world. I think really along the lines what our strength here would be to start helping people be able to accomplish, and by people I'm thinking more general contractors and guys that are in the construction world of actually building stuff, because that's where our focus is, and therefore there could be a potential down the road for that, but we're nowhere near that. But I would throw out that I'm heavily involved in the construction CPM conference, and part of what I enjoy being a part of that is I've had an opportunity over the past 3-4 years to present on topics at the CPM conference. And I've presented stuff there that when I explained what I was doing to like Ranjit, my VP of project controls, he said, Josh, you're giving away the farm. You're telling them all of our tricks. Why are you doing that kind of stuff? And I said, pushing forward the practice of scheduling to where people are utilizing what we're doing and what we're able to provide is more important than us keeping this to ourselves. So I push to have those types of conversations and to show that kind of stuff at the conferences like that.
Beautiful. And just for everyone listening, that's the CPM conference in this year, which is 2025 in Philadelphia, isn't it? To me, it's got one of the greatest websites ever because it actually looks like 1990s P6. Well,
very
P2,
on
P3
brand.
back then.
Very on brand.
Yeah, very on brand.
Yes.
Beautiful. Then with that, I think I'll ask for just final thoughts. Any final thoughts you want to share with people before we go?
I just want people to really push the boundaries of what they're able to show and to say about the schedules. I have a personal belief that schedulers should rule the world, and therefore I want our voice to be at the forefront of people's thinking, how they're utilizing, how they're managing the work, and if you're getting your voice out there and being able to provide value to your companies. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to be a part of it. I believe in the practice of scheduling.
That's wonderful. Well then, with that, I'd like to say a massive thank you. I could personally just listen to this for hours. For everyone listening, if you like it, please share it with someone you may think would really enjoy listening to Mike and myself and Joshua talking about advanced scheduling. And if you've really enjoyed this discussion, just let us know. And who knows, we might be lucky enough to get Josh back on another episode to talk about something else. I personally enjoy that. But other than that, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll see you on the next one.